Servus and hello, Matthias here, and this is Single Track. I got another incredible finisher from this year's Beast of Big Creek on the show. Brittany Kealy joins me to chat about her full running calendar this year, her upcoming first 100-miler, and her joys and challenges at this year's Beast. We talk about balancing parenthood with the joys of high mileage weeks, fueling strategies, and volunteering at trail races. This is a full episode. Let's get into it. Brittany, you are on Single Track. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
You just ran Beast, and then I said, hey, I need some people who ran Beast to chat about it, and you threw your hand up in the air. So let's talk about Beast and start there. This was sort of a little bit of a late addition to your running schedule because your running schedule has been pretty full. So Let's start with Beast. How was the race for you?
Oh man, it was incredible. It was a really, really challenging race, like right out of the gate. I knew the climbs the climb was going to be significant, and I wasn't sure, just looking at the elevation profile, how hard that was going to hit right from the start, because it looks a little bit sneaky until like around mile 5 or so. But yeah, it was full throttle right out of the gate. And there was one woman, Brooke, the winner. Like, I saw her on Ultra sign up, and I was like, oh yeah, this gal's gonna be fast. So I just went out and tried to hang on to her tail as long as I could.
So, have you ever been on these trails before then or not? So you had no idea?
No.
Okay.
No, I'd never been to Mount Eleanor before, and I'm really sad because the view was incredible, and I looked at it for like 20 seconds when I was scrambling down. I need to go back.
It is a super unique course, and I feel like super honored to have been able to take over the race, just because there are some steep races out there. There are some hard races out there. There's some races that take you above tree line, but very few races give you just for the last mile, but for that last mile, an absolute incredible view, right? You see all the volcanoes and this Sound and Hood Canal and stuff like that. So, but obviously you didn't get a lot of time enjoying that because you were chasing Brooke down the mountain then again.
Oh, right. But that alpine feel, I mean, specifically after the aid station, when you just come out and exposed all of a sudden, and you see the wildflowers and the colors of everything are really changing, like the water, it feels really different and really exciting.
Yeah, no, it is. I think it's a unique course. And I mean, because I didn't create the race, I can toot that horn, even though I sort of own it now. But I don't think, and that's why, and I say that like on every podcast, I say that all the time, but that's why I jumped so hard when the previous race director retired that I wanted to keep that permit open, because I don't know if we would have kept the permit, right? Because it is on such unique trails. It is a popular trail, especially during the summer, right? But
the hikers were so nice too. Like, there was many of them out there, and they were nothing but encouraging. It was great.
That is really cool to hear, because my course or my summit crew, as they went up to check the markings, they said that some of the markings had been taken off and they had to re-mark some sections, and then as they swept, they took everything down, but now markings showed back up again. So I feel like somebody was messing with the markings up there. So I need to investigate that. But luckily nobody got lost and accidentally tried to go up the winter route, which would not have been a good idea.
Yikes.
So I remember you coming into the finish line, though,
and you gassed,
and your face looked anything but. This was a great race. I checked in with you, and you were like, blah.
Yeah.
So take I mean, that's one of the beauties of the Beast, right? Is that it's this short that you can really push hard. You don't ever really have to get into this long time forever pace ultra management, right? You sort of can like really put the foot down. But so tell me about the downhill. Tell me about some of the crux points of your race.
Oh gosh. Well, I mean, I was redlining that whole race, which it's like good and bad to admit. I'm proud that I was able to give just a full effort for every minute of it, but at the same time, I'm like, well, that's an indicator of overall fitness if I was just like absolutely maxed out heart rate wise. But it was on the downhill specifically, that was a little bit scary at the end. I was trying to be conservative initially on my descent because I had so many gear issues that day. I broke my hydration bladder, I broke my necklace, my poles got caught in it. I broke the poles themselves, which I had borrowed from a friend and had to replace. I mean, there's like everything that could go wrong did go wrong. But then once I started on the more runnable part of the downhill, like I said, approached it a little bit cautiously at first. I had an incident about 2 months ago in a race where I was just grinding the downhill, like throwing down sevens probably, and I ended up like peeing blood afterwards.
Oh,
Just
okay.
yeah, like way too hard,
Yeah, yeah.
going way too, and there was like friction in my bladder. So I was nervous about it. Honestly, like a mile or two, I was running like just a little under 9-minute pace. My friend was on my tail. I pulled off to go to the bathroom. I was like, everything looks good. I'm just gonna send it down the hill. So the last 4 miles or so, I really went as fast as I could. And that felt good. It felt really glidey. My quads were, of course, shot like everybody else's, but at the same time, I felt like there was rebound. I wasn't just collapsing, and that was good. I felt really surprisingly strong in the later stages of the race. And yeah, I came into the finish area looking really garbage, but I also, when we popped out to the campground, I thought that was like the finish. I gave like everything I had for 100 or 200 and then ended up extending probably another 4/10 of a mile. So yeah, I crawled that last little bit.
This is like the section where you all get to hate the race director. It's like you come around the corner and you start smelling the campfires and you're like, all right, we're close, and then it drags and it drags
Yeah.
and it
Oh man.
drags.
It was rough. The guy you talked to last week, I actually had passed him right before the campground.
Oh, so he was the
And
guy flip-flopping with you. Perfect.
yeah, and then he said that he let it go. He was like, I can't get her. But then as we came around, he was like, oh, she's still there. I'm gonna go get her. And he beat me by just a little
Yeah, he said he felt bad. And the reason why he put his foot down is, I mean, if you listen to the whole show, he said that he had like a friendly wager with his buddy,
bit.
and so he heard somebody behind him, and so he was
Yeah.
freaking out that he would be getting caught. So he was like, okay, I'm gonna have to speed up again. But yeah, this
Oh, and I
last
can totally relate. Yeah.
yeah, this last section is just so it's just so tricky, and I wish we need like drones or something like that for next year, because
Oh,
I
yeah.
always stand in the finish line and I sort of only see your face coming through the finish, and I have to sort of gauge and measure your entire race by that impression. And I'd love to see how fast you as top runners are able to take the upper section, because I think that would look absolutely incredible to witness. And then
Yeah.
on the downhill, when you can really let it fly, and especially on like, that big creek loop on the far loop, there aren't that many hikers, right? So you're not really worried. And there's some sections that are so runnable where you can just like completely bomb.
Right. Yeah. It was super nice. And also the kind of course where you can plot improvements on. I mean, I've caught myself thinking, well, next year if I did this differently, when you're running those really uphill miles and you're running a pace of like, anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes, it's easy to envision, okay, if I got a little stronger here and tightened up here and didn't stop at the 8, it seems achievable. And now that I know women are running under 3 hours, I'm like, ooh, okay.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I mean, I know I've now talked about this race on this podcast so many times. So, my dear listeners, I apologize that I'm endlessly talking about it, but it's just such a unique race, especially in the Pacific Northwest, where most races, trail races, trying to anchor themselves around the ultra distance, right? And so you end up just managing yourself entirely different if you
Right.
immediately thinking 50K, 50 miles, right? And this is such a short race. So in some ways it doesn't show up on people's radars, because when they're looking for trail, they are looking for ultra, but it does give you the ability to sort of plug it into your calendar on a more regular basis, and really, as you're saying, looking at the different sections and try to improve on it. And I mean, Brent, who I had on the show last year, I think he was the first time who sort of expressed how much more a race like this can destroy your body than a normal 50K
Oh, for sure.
in
Yeah.
the week after, right? So you can't like completely destroy yourself if you have a full calendar of events, but on the other side, you can totally use it as a yardstick of like, okay, this is a unique event and it's just going to destroy me, and then I'm gonna move on.
Yeah. I felt surprisingly good coming off it. I mean, when you're doing that much climbing, I feel like soreness sets in differently. The legs feel tighter as opposed to after a 50K, I often just feel like bloated, like
Mhm.
my legs feel very puffy. But I'd say I think 3 days after, I had a pretty good fast little like 10 miler around my house. And part of it too is coming down from being really high up and then, you're back to sea level and you feel faster. So
Yeah,
it was a great race for me at a really great time in my like personal program. So I'm excited for what it was and what it's prepared me to do in the coming weeks.
I like it. I like it. Perfect segue. I briefly look on your Instagram. We have a pretty full summer, and you've
Yeah.
raced lots of races. So give us quickly some of your highlights because it started fairly early on in the season.
Yeah, thanks. I've had an interesting year. So I started racing ultras pretty seriously last fall, like last October, November. I had a miscarriage last summer, and that was really devastating. And at the same time, my wife had just gotten pregnant. So getting into ultras was for me a way to heal from that experience and also to do something that felt, for lack of a better term, laborious. Like it's not the same as labor, but it was really challenging and had a lot of, similarities to that experience. So I set out with the intention of doing 100 miler, which I haven't done yet. I'm racing Oregon Cascades next weekend,
Okay.
and this year having a bunch of time off for maternity leave, and even when I was working, I'm a school teacher, so the schedule is a little more flexible. I decided I wanted to race every month, and I wanted to experience all the seasons, all the distances, all the like local racing companies to just get to know what I liked. I wasn't sure if I liked shorter stuff like 50Ks or if 100 miles is going to be my sweet spot. It's been really fun. I've been racing at least once a month, sometimes two or three. And then the weekends that I'm not racing, my family we usually camp and volunteer.
Nice.
And it's been a really really exciting
This is
year.
like very intense and very intentional
Yeah,
and full on immersion into the scene, into the community, and also into well, also
yes,
into the sport, if you will.
yeah,
So,
absolutely.
what was your first one last fall then?
That was the Defiance 50K, so
Okay.
super local, about 3 miles from my house.
Nice. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Perfect. And then did you, I mean, if you I think I saw Dirtle Turtle, but then wasn't the first one you did for the year then this year? You
Yeah,
la
no.
you're laughing at Dirty Turtle.
Dirty Turtle was a situation. And that's actually where I met my friend Rebecca, who I raced with at Beast of Big Creek and whose poles I broke during the race. We met during Dirty Turtle.
Okay.
That race was crazy. Like everyone went off course. It was the only race where I've been like drinking during the race. We were like fireball. It was a party. And a crazy challenging course, really fun. Yeah, that was not the first race I'd done this year. I started the year with the Capital Peak Mega Fat Ass in
Okay.
January. I
It's
did.
I don't know how the weather was. Was it a good year weather? I've done it once in absolutely atrocious weather, and I was like,
No,
I mean, it's really in my neighborhood, but I don't know if I ever want to do this again.
I felt that way. It was like the scariest thing ever for me at the time. I had done two ultras. Both of them were cozy, close to home. The night before, I knew it was going to snow. Had no clue what I was getting myself into. I did not have like the right kind of gear, and I didn't want to go. And my wife was like, "Well, you only spent like $20. You don't have to go." But I just knew in my head, I was like, "The whole point of this is I'm trying to be uncomfortable." So I'm gonna go, and it snowed and was very, very challenging, and it was fun. And I putting myself out there in those elements was kind of the first shift in my perception of my own abilities this year. I thought, okay, I don't have to win every time. In fact, I can do really poorly in terms of time and place, but I can still experience something incredible and have that kind of hyperlapse view of the forest that you get from being out there for 5, 6 hours. And so that one opened up a lot of possibilities for me. And in fact, that week was one of the craziest weeks of my racing year because I raced Capitol Peak on Saturday and then went to work. And that Wednesday, I found out I got off the wait list for the Orcas Island 50K,
Oh,
which was
nice.
that Saturday. Orcas is beautiful. Like my favorite 50K by far, and I'm so happy I made that trip work. But it's a small community, and there was no lodging left over, so I ended up like getting on Facebook and getting connected through like a friend of a friend of a friend's grandma, and I stayed in her goat barn, and it was like sub 30 degrees. So that was the first time I raced like back to back weekends. I didn't know that that was something you could do, that was safe. I'm a high school coach, and a lot of my ideas about like safety in terms of mileage are a little bit limited by that perspective, I think. And that's when I was like, okay, no, you can really be out here a lot if you approach it with intelligence and listen to your body, and you don't like redline every race. But that was the start of the year.
Nice, nice. Good start. Good start. I've been out in Orcas too, attempted the 100 mile and DNF'd it, but yeah, the course
Oh yeah.
is absolutely beautiful. I'm still bummed about it because it was the one year when Orcas 100 was in the fall and it was really
Mm,
dry and really nice. And I was like, that was the year that probably was the easiest on that course because it can be really gnarly out there. But yeah, I didn't make it. So nice. So you kicked off the year with kind of a cracker, and then let's skip to Dirty Turtle. You won that one.
yeah, I did.
Amazing.
Um, thank you.
Including fireball shots and all.
Yeah, that was a really tough race. There was two other women, my friend now Rebecca, and another gal, and we were back and forth who was in the lead the whole time. But it was so hot that day, and the climbs were so frequent that we were just like playing tag the whole time. And then around 24 or 25 miles, everyone got off course. Some ATV guys had moved the flagging, and
Yeah.
we all, the top three leading women, and then a group of 4 or 5 guys, were huddled together with one phone on speakerphone, calling the RD, being like, "Where do we go?"
Oh
And
shit. That
after we got
reset everything.
no, no joke. After we got off that phone call, I just jokingly like drew a line in the sand with my shoe. I was like, "Okay, guys, race starts now." And they continued to race me. I mean, there's a really big climb in there, the Turtle Rock climb, where it's
Mhm.
just vertical. You have to use your hands and a rope at the end, and you do that twice. And so me and these other two gals got to the top of that rock at the same time, exactly 3 miles from the finish. And I just looked at them and I was like, "Okay, race you down." Yeah.
That's amazing. That's super cool in ultras, especially because in ultras often things stretch out so far, right? That you
Hmm.
don't really see anyone for sometimes miles, right? You like
Right.
have an idea where you're at, but you often, especially on the long distances, you completely run in no man's land by yourself, right? So it's kind of cool to be together, even though the circumstances were a little suspect.
Oh, totally. And I have to give a shout out to Gretchen Taw, the race director for Dirty Turtle. I think she's doing really fun and incredible stuff. And they sold me on their other partner race, the Lumberjack Endurance Run. I changed my June plans around because I had so much fun with that group of people. So I ended up running Lumberjack, and that was a really isolated race. I
Mhm.
was alone through the whole thing, and that was my first and only so far 100K.
Mhm. I ran 100K there too. So it's interesting because it lumberjack is loops, right? So I mean, it feels more
Hmm.
isolated because just of the distance, and the course spreads out the loops, so like what 12, 13 miles or so, right?
Yeah,
Uh
I lumbered. Yeah, 12 and a half miles, so five of
exact.
those.
Yeah, I say it roughly because I think when I ran it, I tried to sort of calculate how long it would take, and I came to the finish after the first loop. And I think my watch said like 14 and a half miles. And I'm like, oh, wait, I have
Yeah.
to do this 4 times. I have to like recalibrate how long I'm going to be out there.
Oh man.
So
Yeah.
I think they adjusted the course a little bit. But I really loved running through the night on that loop. I was slow enough that I really made it almost through the entire night, but it was a really
Wow.
fun one. Yeah.
I haven't really done the night running yet. I've skated around that because my 100K came to a close at around 8:30. So I just
Nice.
had darkness for the last 2 miles and managed it without a headlamp. But
Oh yeah,
that
yeah.
will be unavoidable during my 100. So
You know, I really, really love it. It's a really unique experience, and I've always surprised myself, even though not a strong runner, I'm a slow runner, but I find energy in the night. I think the
okay, cool.
focus on number one, you have to manage the entire transition, right? You have to, from seeing everything to literally being like focused on that little light beam in front of you and stuff. And to be able to sort of manage a transition and then settle in and sort of knowing that that's what you're going to be doing gets cooler too. So on hot
Mm,
days, right? I mean, I'm always surprised how much energy I find in the night times. Like I really enjoy it. I mean, they're hard, right? Especially if
yeah.
been out for 20 hours and so, right? I mean, it's not like you're flying, but I love this. I wish actually that some race director would put on a night race, right? That folks who don't want to go the super long distances or are faster and finish before the night even sets could experience that night running, because I think it's a very special part of our sport that very often is only truly experienced if you run 100 miles. Right?
Yeah, that's cool. That's a interesting perspective and encouraging. So thank you.
Yeah, no, I know. You just said you were gearing up for Oregon, and I think that yeah, I've always found, I know there's some trepidation. I was, of course you're nervous. If you've never
Hmm.
done it before, then it's something unknown and stuff, right? And you think about, everything that there is to think about it in the night. But in general, it becomes this very special part. And of all the different pieces that makes our sport, right? The challenging mountain ascents and the solitude and sometimes being with people in the aid station, everything that you need to sort of manage for yourself. The night piece, I think, is one of those that makes our sport really unique and special.
Yeah, cool.
So I said all of this, wishing you the absolute best experience heading into Oregon next week.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm really excited. It's been a 40-week training block, so that's significant. That's a lot of eggs in one basket for me.
Yes. Well, I'm not a coach, so I can't tell you anything. And by now you're anyway already tapering. So now it's just a mental game, right?
Yes,
Now it's just
yes,
dialing your gear and really being strong on nutrition. That's what my coach is constantly yelling at me, right? It's like you always need more than you think you need, and that's one of the first things that breaks down and stuff. So no, I am you got this. So
thanks.
you're doing lumberjack, and then you can't come in first there too, right? So was
Yeah,
the first year that they sort of had this combined trophy, and then you take first place in Dirty Turtle and lumberjack. So I think it probably took even them by surprise. They're like, well, wait a second.
yeah. I felt a little guilty because I won shoes, and that was really, really exciting for me. I mean, like everybody in ultras, you put a lot of money into registering for races, and then just shoes too. It's like basically a pair a month. So I went and claimed them last week, and I was like, oh, I'm so sorry to be getting both of these at the same time, but I wanted to get new shoes for my race next week. And yeah, that was really generous of them. Really, really nice gift.
That is awesome. Very, very good. So what shoes you're racing with? Or
Speed
then
goat.
speed
Yeah, I
goats?
I do. I love speed goats. I'm a Hoka girl. And I am a coach. I don't know if I mentioned that. I don't see a lot of high schoolers wearing Hokas, but I like wearing Hokas in front of the kids. I think that they're a great brand, and it's good for the foot. I like speed goats though because of the combination with Vibrams, and I run in Vibrams occasionally. Actually, I built up to doing like almost 20 milers in them this year.
Wow.
So yeah, it's good. Good hybrid
Nice.
shoe.
Yeah. No,
Mhm.
that's great. I myself have not been in a Hoka, but I don't know, mainly because they're never on sale.
Yeah,
It's hard to find them on sale.
I agree. I actually got lucky last week. I think they had a demo or something at REI. They had every single size. So, and I'm just not picky about what colors I get. I'll
Mhm.
take whatever I can find if I find a pair at Ross or, whatever. So I got some last week. They are white, not the most popular color in the ultra running
Well,
scene, but
they will be white for one day and then it's
yeah,
over.
yeah, it's already over. They're trashed.
Exactly. That's how it's supposed to be. Well, awesome. So did you ever consider signing up for Beast and Running Beast that this could potentially have a negative impact going into Oregon, or were you thinking this would match as a good tune-up? Because it's like it's so different going,
Oh yeah.
short, steep, and then 100 miler.
No, I didn't think it would negatively impact because I'm high mileage and I could have like dialed down the intensity and just had a good hikey day.
Mhm.
But then that's just where I was at that week. I really needed to kind of get some stuff out of my system, and it was fun for me to think about nothing else but pushing. But no, I wasn't worried about it. In fact, looking back over the year, I haven't had the smartest year racing like 12 or 13 times or whatever I've done so far is not something I would advise anyone who's serious about their performance to do because my performance has suffered. I've had races I've raced and I've had a lot of races I've just run.
Mhm.
Next year, I think I'd like to do more of the shorter stuff. Um, Definitely coming back for Beast, and then my friend Scott, the Souls, they run the Vert Running series. That's something I'd really like to do next year. And it was something I wanted to do this year, to be honest, but I didn't have enough confidence in myself. I was like a decent runner in high school, but I didn't run in college. And those types of races, I think, tend to attract really strong talent. Girls who ran in college and now they're competing at the shorter trail runs as a way to extend that career. And I felt, well, not good, like not good enough. But now I'm like, these are fun, and it's cool to be able to go harder and to not spend your entire weekend doing one
Mhm.
race. That's
Mhm.
something I'd like to do more of next year, and then be more intentional about my longer efforts. Maybe doing, only 3 longer races instead of 12.
Instead of 12. Well, I mean, you took advantage of your maternity leave well,
Yes.
right? I mean, I've talked
Yes.
to a couple people now that had found some time, a break between work, right? And they were really able to sort of dedicate that to training and stuff. And, when if the general, I mean, you have a new baby, so I don't know if the general stress level is down, right? But, that so much when it comes to that stuff is also about good sleep and,
Right.
good
Yeah.
overall sort of like taking care of yourself. And if then external factors, I've often talked about, I wish in I'm not really keeping a training journal that detailed, but if I would keep a training journal, I would like to also highlight sort of the external stress factors that are sort of
Mm,
part of
yeah.
one's life, right? Where you're not just saying, oh, it was extra hot out or whatever, my knee was tweaking, but you also say, well, I also had a crazy deadline at work. So I was very distracted on my run, right? I mean, some of those pieces, I think, really affect us. And if you have a little bit of a break, then it's kind of nice to be able to layer on a little bit more. And as you're saying, you got to experience a lot of different race organizations, a lot of different
Right. Yeah.
styles of races and stuff. And I don't know, I feel like here on the West Coast, trail running came always with the caveat of it being ultra, right? It
Right.
started off being sort of a distance above the marathon distance. And I feel like as our sport's growing, the bird running series is a good example in that too. It's like in Europe, you've got with a higher density, population density, you've got so many shorter races where people just race and, 800 people show up, they run up this mountain up and
Yeah,
down. And
that's
that's it,
wild. That's
right?
wild.
It's crazy, right?
Yeah,
I don't think
it's
anybody
cool.
would
It's
get
exciting.
it's exciting, right? And I know folks who run the shorter distances and they can run a race every 2 weeks or so, right? And
Hmm.
run it very competitively, right? Because
Yeah.
closer distances don't have to travel that far, and shorter races, faster recovery time and stuff, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, doing just ultra distance is not sustainable. I mean, okay, don't get me wrong, because of course there are those local legends who are out there and they do 100 milers like every other weekend. I mean, that's its own situation. But for like a younger person who's really high intensity and highly competitive, you can't race every 3 or 4 weeks realistically, because all you're ever doing is tapering, racing, recovering, tapering,
Mhm.
racing, recovering. You have to blend in the shorter distances if you'd like to have any build. And I think it makes a lot of sense to say take a 4 month training block and have one or two shorter distances like half marathon length or just a 15-mile mountain loop or whatever, have a 50K in there, back off for a little, and then race a 50 mile and then start over. I
Yeah.
think that that's more of the future I see for myself in the next couple of years.
I think especially if you really want to race it, right?
Yeah.
Because I think the other side of the sort of ultra running scene is also just the adventuring, right? People sign up
Hmm.
and pay the fee, so they get a bib and don't have to worry about the course, and they have food provided, and they go on
Right.
long fast packing trips. And I think that's fantastic too, right? I mean, especially for people who are not really comfortable out in the wilderness or so, right? To have sort of this a race environment where there is some support there and stuff. It's a great way for people to go out and experience the mountains,
Totally.
right?
Yeah, and you hit the nail on the head there too. I think particularly for the female experience, I don't have a lot of friends who I can go running with and different
Mhm.
work schedules to meet with and that sort of thing. Going for adventurous mountain runs isn't something that I feel like completely confident in my ability to execute safely on my own. And races is a safe format to do that.
Yeah.
It makes me feel like, I'm not going to get attacked or something like that.
Yeah, I think that's a big component, and I think that's sort of an important component to highlight and consider for race directors as they're building these experiences, right? I think a lot of our larger conversations, sometimes the media, is around prize money and what we can do to
Hmm.
kind of support the pros up front and stuff, right? But these races are just really great, safe environments for people to have a great time out in the mountains. And yeah, if you then layer on a lot of them, then you don't even really have to train by yourself out there, right? So it actually works
Totally.
really
Yeah.
well and is an important aspect of our sport that isn't just the competitiveness. It's just yeah. I mean, we loved at Beast. I mean, when we took over the race, and I've also repeated this many times, we took the cutoff away, right? It used to be a super tight cutoff
Yeah.
of just over 4 hours, and we were like, there are people out there who want to run this race, and they deserve to run this race, and they deserve to have this experience. And why should we say, if it would be different if it would be a safety issue for the folks up at the summit, right? I mean, there are some factors to consider in
Right.
extending the cutoff, right? But we had a 65-year-old woman from Olympia, finishing in just over 7 hours, and she had an absolutely incredible time, right? And I
Yeah.
want her experience and her race and her finish to count just as much as somebody who, is super dialed, super focused, and gets it done in 3 hours, right?
Yeah. That's beautiful. I mean, that's really what I think makes running special. And the same thing at the high school level. Cross country is a no cut sport. Like
Mhm.
it truly is for everybody. And I love that you guys honored that in the race design. I appreciate that.
Yeah, it's been something that's I mean, it comes very natural for me. I've been like cut now a couple times at races, and I'm like, this sucks, right? Especially if you're feel like you could continue, right? Especially if you feel like, you could make it to the finish and not being allowed to, right? It's just one of those like, ugh, this stinks, right? And
Yeah.
so I think it's important. We should talk a little bit about your high school coaching. My
Oh, yeah.
daughter's
Yeah.
daughter is about to enter high school and she's debating
Exciting.
sports right now. So you should make a case of why she should run cross country, and I make her listen to this.
Oh my gosh, why you should run cross country. Whew. I, I'm so for sports. As long as kids are trying something, I don't care if it's basketball, soccer, baseball, whatever. But cross country is pretty special. It seems to attract uh, very dedicated sort of athlete, um, adventurous people with a lot of spirit, people who are not afraid to explore and maybe get lost a little bit. But there's definitely something in high school cross country, specifically the girls teams, it's really unique. I mean, the bonds that you form when you're spending a couple hours a day running with people is so different from ball sports. Like I played basketball before I ever started running, and I got a good squad and like tons of great friends, but there's something like, there isn't as much time to just socialize because so much of the game is um, like when you're playing a game, you're not like just talking, right? But when you're running, you just get to hang out in the woods for long periods of time and really get to know your team and kind of explore all the things you start questioning and wondering about in high school. And I don't know if I'm making a great case for this right now. I love it, and I think everyone should try it. It's a great sport.
Well, it is an interesting sport because your definition of team is very different to a regular team sport, especially a team sport where you have very limited players on the field, right?
Yeah,
Right? In volleyball or basketball, you've got your players, and it's great to have a team, but then the pressure that comes with that is a little bit different than in cross country, where by and large you run for yourself within a team, right?
right. Yeah. I mean, we're pretty team oriented. I'm all about the team score over the personal score, but like you're saying, there's so many different metrics through which you can measure that personal success. Whereas in basketball, did we win? Did we lose? In running, you can feel good about your performance, even if your time wasn't, your personal best. You could have had a fantastic day on a particularly tricky section of the course, or
Mm-hmm.
you could have moved up 5 places or beat the girl that you race against in dual meets every week who you never beat. And then on top of that, traveling to meets is so much fun, and
Okay.
getting the co-ed aspect of the sport too. I mean, that's really special. That's more of a collegiate feel, and I think it really elevates the high school experience to get to play sports with boys, or as a boy with girls. That's really cool.
Cool. I like that. I like that. I think that's a good way of um sort of framing the sport without going into this classic territory of like my sport is the best sport and everything else is trash, right?
Yeah.
That's not a way of framing things. Well, amazing. Well, thank you for being a coach to kids. I've had
Yeah.
a kid just graduating, and we took our kids hiking when they were younger, right? And then during the teenage years, it was this classic of like, what, hang out with parents is dumb and stuff. And now that they graduate, all of a sudden they discover running for themselves and they do stuff on their own. And I'm like, oh,
Yep.
wow. we did plant the right seed here somewhere, right?
Yeah, it seems to be a pretty common experience. And I wish more people would just try it. If they were unsure, on the fence, or hadn't done a sport before, like, cross country is the place. Like, there's this prevailing attitude that running is horrible, that it's awful if you've never tried it. But I'm very insistent that if you do it for 21 days, it won't be that way anymore. And that's where the shift happens. That's when it becomes a habit. If you
Mhm.
can just hang in there for that long, and you don't need to be running every day, you can be walking, you can be primarily walking with a minute of running. You can be just walking and playing ultimate frisbee, but getting your body used to that time outside, it will it'll change things, you know. It'll slow everything down and just bring you a new sense of wellness. It's for everybody. Running is for everybody.
That was a beautiful way of putting it, and I kind of want to stop it here, but we should talk just for 2 minutes about your
Okay.
upcoming Oregon race.
Oh
So,
yeah. Woo.
where you
Oh
at in your
man.
headspace? Well, tell me a little bit, like how prepared are you? How ready are you?
Well, right now I'm throwing a taper tantrum. I
Yes.
don't rest well. Since I haven't been working, I've been running too much. I like market myself as a high mileage person, but I don't believe that that's effective at all. I mean, more and more in the media, you see women, like the women who are the most successful are the ones scaling back the long run.
Hmm.
Camille Herron, when she came out earlier this year and was like, I never do a long run of more than 23 miles,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was like, how do I hide this article from my wife? Like, um, so
because
I don't know.
because there's the psychological aspect, right?
Yeah,
You want to be out there, right? To
I
really
do.
sort of kind of like let go of everything, to escape is so beautiful, right?
Yeah, my wife calls it ferret mode. Like I just get kind of crazy all the
Hmm.
time if I can't get outside. And I need to be a little bit more intentional about finding ways to do that that are like lower impact because I know in the long run, going for long runs all the time or running 2 times a day all summer just because I could was really fun, but it wasn't probably not the best idea for my body. So as far as going into Oregon Cascades, in terms of mileage, I feel I feel confident. I feel like finishing isn't scary to me. I feel like unless something goes really wrong, I'm going to finish 100 miles. As far as how to race that, I mean, that's going to unfold as it goes. I have all kinds of like strategies and plans in mind, but 100 is a different beast, and we'll see how the heat affects if there's going to be any wildfires next week,
Hmm.
plus the elevation, and that's the biggest thing that's on my mind right now. I'm like tossed about if I should go down early next week and camp a few days because it goes pretty high, and I'm absolutely at sea level. So
Hmm. Hmm. I know
yeah,
that's for me always a big X factor too, right? If you because I mean some people act and say they're completely unaffected by that, but I do feel it. Like if I go up, I go
yeah.
get a lot slower and I have to be a lot more intentional about my movement and my breathing and everything, right? And that definitely affects the racing plan altogether, right?
Yeah, for sure. I swept the White River 50 course 2 weeks ago, the first half of it, and it went up to 6,000 feet, I believe. And it was thin. I mean, when I started my turnaround up there and I was just walking along carrying flags and having a snack break, I mean, my heart rate was up, and
Hmm.
that was nerve-wracking.
Hmm.
I wish that I had done more adventure runs like up at Rainier this summer
Yeah.
instead of just doing all this stuff around my home. I mean, the amount of road runs I've done this summer is embarrassing given how much time I have had to make a better effort. But right now, like Hayes in the Barn, I can only do what I can do. I've got 11 days. I can't really change too much. So
Yeah. No, you're gonna do great.
thanks.
It's gonna be an awesome experience, and no matter what. And yeah, I mean you're fast, so you don't have to worry about the cutoff. That's the thing that's always my monkey on my back, right? I've been in
Yeah.
places where you come to an aid station, you feel like you need a little bit of a reset, and if the clock is then ticking, right, that sort of creates a level of like
Oh, yeah.
nervousness, right? And then you start doing too much math in your head as you're going from one section to the next section and stuff, right? And that kind of game then takes a lot of the fun out of being out there, right? You want to be able
Yeah.
to race the people around you, or have a great time with them, right? I mean, it can be both, right? Or and look at the different section and truly enjoy them. Are you somebody who's a super planner in that regard? Like, do you have like a book written out with each section? Yeah, I know somebody
Oh,
who does
yeah.
100 milers. He has people crewing and pacing him, and he hands them a binder. It's
Oh my
like,
gosh.
this is what I need at this station. This is how I'm going to be feeling here. Prepare for me this and this, that. Like, he is like super controlled and organized. So are you just like going down there and winging it, or where are you
Oh,
at?
not winging it at all. I have been saving for months to get new gear. So just got all my new stuff, and then I have a big document of my nutrition plan, which is, yeah, I take that seriously. It hasn't come up yet, but I follow a plant-based diet, so sometimes I have to do a little extra planning to make sure that I'll get the whole foods I'll need from an aid station because I'm not just like a sugar runner. I
Hmm.
need like real food.
Hmm.
As far as like crew though, things are a little up in the air right now. We've got a new baby, so that
Yeah.
really limits how my wife can help me because that assumes that at the exact moment I come through an aid station, her hands are free.
Hmm.
And then there's been kind of some health stuff going on with other family members. So it looks like it might just be the three of us going down, which means I'll be crewless. They'll just be there to celebrate with me at the finish. And with all of that in mind, I'm happy that I've been planning and working on my document for the last month because plans do change and it makes me feel like confident since I had backup options, I guess.
Yeah. I have another friend who goes completely crewless, always, all the time, no pacer ever, hardly ever, and they are super good about managing their own time and doing well. So I don't say you have to have a crew. The crew is not going to get you to the finish line. It will be you and you alone in
Yeah,
many ways.
it's yeah, it's gonna be tough. Like I really struggle with my hands. I lose the ability to use them very well
Oh,
during
yeah, yeah.
races. Yeah, I suffer from Raynaud. So during cold races, I like actually can't. I can't even put on gloves and stuff. But the same thing with heat, I get like water retention, and so things like changing my shoes, maybe
Mhm.
changing my shirt halfway through. Those are things that I really do need help for, and still kind of ironing out how it's going to happen, but it'll come together on the day. I
Nice.
believe in it. Yeah.
Nice. Well, you sound concentrated and controlled and confident,
Thanks.
while at the same time it being your first 100 miler. So there's a lot of unknowns to encounter. So
Yeah. Let's, yeah.
I wish I wish my listeners could see your face, because your face just in that moment didn't show the same amount of confidence than your voice said.
Yeah. Well, I just thought, oh yeah, after the lumberjack, one of my shoes was just a little too tight and my foot got super bruised, but I'd never had bruising on the top of my foot before, so I thought I broke my foot. And that was 60 miles. And so yeah, 100, there will be things that I can't account for. And I'm open to that, but experiencing that at 3 in the morning in the darkness will be different. So hopefully,
Yeah,
hopefully my mental fortitude will withstand the challenges.
yeah. Well, and let's hope that my my good nighttime experiences will carry you through, because I feel like in
Oh,
the night,
thank you.
I don't know, I feel like in the night everything reduces down to very little, right? And I don't know if it's
Hmm.
even the fear of the reality that what are you gonna do? You can't really like go out. You are by yourself, right? So you just have to like
Yeah.
plow through and don't let the discomfort sort of carry you into a bad space. I feel like it's once it's daylight, you're like, oh, now I could just like, might as well just quit. Right? It's like at the nighttime, you don't allow yourself that. You're like, no, I got to stick with this. So
Yeah,
let's hope.
it's really good to hear you say this because we just spent the last week volunteering out at the Bigfoot 200, and I mean those people that's a whole different breed of runner. Like those people run for like 4 days. It's crazy, but
It's
everyone was
nuts.
saying 1 to 4 a.m. is the hardest part every day. That's when you'll want to quit, and I'm like, oh no, that's going to be getting close to the end of the race. Like, so hearing you say that you like that part, I'm like, good. Okay, not everybody hates 1 to 4.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like for me, for my personal time is when I hit sort of the 26-hour time, because then I
Mm,
really question myself, why the hell am I still out here? right? When I'm
Yeah.
sort of like, I've done this yesterday already. I'm doing the same thing than I did yesterday, and I have now 20 miles to go or something. It's like, this is stupid. Why am I still doing that? And it can be daylight, and it can be, and you feel like another day, that's when for me it gets hard. But the nighttime is sort of like, I'm buckled in, I'm focused, tunnel vision. I'm just gonna get shit done and not let the sort of exterior things to even come to me. So hopefully that works for you too.
Yeah, thank you. I should have been writing that down. I'll have to re-listen.
I know,
My
yeah.
personal pep talk from Matt.
There we go. I like it.
Yeah.
It's funny because I wanted to chat with you after Beast, but now after Beast is before Oregon Cascades. So often I don't get to talk to runners just before a big race. So there is sort of a different conversation to be had than if you come and you just bask in the glory of, having had a good or not good race, but at least you finished it, right? And then we chat, and then everything is sort of in the past, but now we're sort of focusing on what's ahead, which there are a lot of unknowns and a lot of questions and stuff. Let's talk nutrition very quickly. You're
Mm-hmm.
vegan, and you say you're not just doing sugar. What are you preparing? What are you planning?
Oh man. Um, so I make these potato burritos that
Oh,
are quite good. I make mashed potatoes, and I know other people do this. Somebody out there on the trails told me this year about the genius of putting anything in a tortilla because then you don't need a bag, right? And if you don't want the tortilla, you don't have to eat the tortilla.
yeah.
But I add nutritional yeast and some spices and seeds to add a little protein and cheesy flavor. And I mix potatoes with real potatoes. It's a whole thing. It's a complex potato burrito. So that will be the foundation of the whole food. Um, Planning to eat a lot of fruit because I do struggle with like salt loss and hydration. So salted watermelon, Fritos. Earlier this year at Badger Mountain, I had a tough race. I got really nauseous and I ended up eating like a whole bag of Fritos. That was the only thing I wanted. So there's some comfort in the Frito. And then Spring Energy. I love it. It's a little outside of my price range, but I've been like saving my little packets here and there, and they're a sponsor. So I'm really hoping, fingers crossed, that they've got the fruity ones and not just all the like high fat nut ones that kind of are harder on the stomach.
Yeah.
Like absolutely fingers crossed on that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Coca-Cola, that's my sugar. I will have so much Coca-Cola during the race.
So that's interesting. I mean, I love Coke too, and that would be also my sugar drink, but I have to be really careful. I feel like I cannot
Mm,
introduce it too soon because
okay.
I get so sweetened out by too much sweet
Mm-hmm.
stuff that I
Yeah.
feel like, I drink Tailwind throughout the race, which is already
Oh,
sweet.
that's so sugary. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But then I do like at the later stages Coke, but I have to be very careful when and how I take it in. I feel like
Yeah, I do half and half. Like I'll fill my little water bottle with water and then up with Coke.
yeah, that's a good combo. I like that. I like that. And yeah, Spring Energy, I know the pricing is so tough on these things, but yes, um, those are great. I have very rarely in a race found that I couldn't stomach a Spring. I feel like I can
Oh yeah,
always
they're
do
so
Spring.
good and they're just made of completely whole foods. It's the best. And then similarly to that, I'm a big fan of Grocery Outlet. We call it Gross Out.
Oh yeah,
Um,
same
gotta
here.
yeah, Gross Out's the best. And right now, at the one that's closer to our house, they have a bunch of those like little toddler food
Hmm.
packs, with the squeezy top, and they're made of like all kinds of fruits and vegetables. Like there's like a strawberry spinach one. So I'm gonna be loading up on those too. They're not the most caloric, but they are hydrating and they are fairly light. So I imagine at any given time you can find me with a couple of those, potato burrito, canister of Coke, and Noon. I'd use Noon for my electrolyte beverage.
Nice,
Yeah.
nice. All right. You seem to be dialed and ready to go, Brittany. Thank you so
Thanks.
much. I push my luck here. No baby has emerged in the back of the
Oh,
screen.
she's been so good.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't wait to go play with her though. It's
I
hot out today, so I got to get outside with her before it gets like too hot.
I know. I walked outside to get some pastries this morning, and got outside
Mm.
and it's like this heat already hit me at like 8:30, and I was like, oh my gosh, today's gonna
Oh,
be a
yeah.
hot day, not a day to do very much.
A
Well,
library day.
a
Yeah.
library day. Perfect. Brittany, thank you so much for coming on Single Track, sharing your story, not just about running Beast of Big Creek, but your entire like running year. There was a lot of awesome stuff, and now you're gearing up for Oregon Cascades. If
Yeah.
people want to reach out, connect with you, Instagram, do you have a handle that you can share or anything?
Yeah, absolutely. I go by Corny Runner, spelled corn.knee.runner, because I have tattoos of popcorn on my knees.
That is amazing, and I'm very bummed that I missed that at least. I wanted to see that. Well, that is very cool. Okay, we'll link that in the show notes,
Cool.
Brittany.
Thank
Um,
you. And thanks for having me. This has been really fun to chat about running for an hour.
yeah, absolutely. Thanks for coming on. Anytime welcome to come back. If you had an absolute amazing race at Oregon Cascades, I might just have to have you back on. You tell that story too.
Cool. Well, you'll be seeing me around the Keelys. We love to volunteer. So, I've raced with you guys now, but now I owe you some time. So, cool.
Appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Yeah. All right. Take care. Stay out of the heat.